The dumbest bill in America is, Garrick, it is banning voter ID in Virginia. Literally getting rid of it and banning it. Banning voter ID in Virginia. Virginia's governor, Ralph Northam.
Everybody's favorite governor in America.
A complete idiot, by the way, and we'll explain to you why he's a complete idiot, not just because of this, but he signed a bill just a couple of days ago that bans voter ID in his state. That is to say, when you go to vote, they don't really care who you are. They don't care if you say, as long as you say you are who you are, then you don't need to show ID. Not important, not necessary. Stupid. Of course, it's going to completely open the door and the floodgates for voter fraud. And it's interesting because Governor Bob McDonnell is the one who implemented voter ID. And of course, Bob McDonnell had his own issues, naturally, because he was ultimately charged with getting a lot of very expensive free gifts from various lobbyists, including a Rolex watch. But it doesn't mean that when the General Assembly at that time in Virginia implemented voter ID, that it wasn't a good idea. Of course it was a good idea. So here's Ralph Northam cryptically talking about, he's in front of the Virginia General Assembly just a couple of months ago, talking about voter ID in his State of the State speech. And here he is.
We need to make it easier for people to participate in their government. There's no more fundamental way to do that than to vote. But in recent years, Virginia has steadily added more restrictions on voting. This infringes on our most basic civil right as Americans. We need to make it easier to vote, not harder.
Yeah. So it's basically saying, cryptically, that voter ID makes it harder for people to vote because voter ID is, according to Ralph Northam, without actually saying so, racist. And there are reasons why he couldn't say that, of course, but he certainly says it privately to his peeps. Go ahead.
He has his own history of racism that, makes a lot of these things hard for him to openly address because Ralph Northam, as we said, hasn't had the best history of discretion.
Absolutely.
So, I think, this is pretty on par with him, so.
It is. And so, as I said, Governor Bob McDonnell, who I think was back in 2005, thereabouts, implemented voter ID.
Yeah.
And what happened was Michael Bloomberg, the same Michael Bloomberg who ran for president of the United States and failed miserably, put an enormous amount of money through his various organizations in the state of Virginia to flip the General Assembly.
To the tune of like $40 million.
$40 million to flip it from a Democrat-controlled General Assembly in the House as well as in the Senate, from Republican to Democrat. And so now, because of all the money Michael Bloomberg spent, the Democrats were able to take over both houses. They now have a Democrat governor in Governor Ralph Northam. And what happened? First thing they did.
Well, they went after guns.
They went after guns. And now, of course, they want to make it easier to vote.
Yeah,
easier so that you can now obviously go ahead and not have to show ID. And by the way, do you remember that time when Barack Obama endorsed Ralph Northam when he ran for governor in 2017? We have a really short clip on this, and it's going to lead up to the ultimate. And here is Barack Obama endorsing him. Here's the clip.
Ralph believes that if we're going to talk about our history, then we should do it in a way that heals, not in a way that wounds, not in a way that divides.
So not long thereafter. Right.
Not in a way that divides. Meanwhile, Northam was the one who put out that disgusting ad where it was basically saying that his opponent would run over black kids in his Chevy pickup truck with a Confederate flag on the back.
He did.
Give me a break.
He did. He said that. And of course, so you have Obama endorsing Ralph Northam. Northam wins, of course. He beats Ed Gillespie, who's the Republican. And that's after, as you said, Garrick, that Northam ran these terrible, disgusting ads. Obama comes into the state and does all the campaign and race baiting, which of course no one can do that better than Barack Obama. But then shortly thereafter, Northam is caught because in his yearbook from med school, he was in blackface. In one case, complete blackface.
Well, they have no idea if he was the person wearing blackface or if he was the person wearing the Klan robes.
He was the Klansman, right.
Yeah, he hasn't said one way or the other, but either one, they're both very bad.
So initially he said he was, and then later he said that, well, neither of those pictures are him. Well, it's in his own yearbook, and basically referencing to him. We have a clip on this, And here's good old Ralph Northam. Here's a clip.
Tonight, the calls for Governor Ralph Northam to resign are growing, but the Virginia Democrat refusing to step down. The trouble started when this racist photo emerged from his medical school yearbook page. At first, Northam confirmed he was one of the two men in the photo, but the next day...
I believe then and now that I am not either of the people in that photo.
But then Northam admitted he had appeared in blackface once before, during a dance contest in 1984 where he dressed as Michael Jackson.
All right, Justin
had
Trudeau.
the shoes, I had a glove, and I used just a little bit of shoe polish to put under on my cheeks. And the reason I used a very little bit is because I don't know if anybody's ever tried that, but you cannot get shoe polish off.
I don't know if you've ever tried that before, but when you put shoe polish on your face, you have to just use a little bit when you're trying to go blackface because it's really hard to get off of me.
Speaking
this guy's
from
an
experience, oh God.
So this is the same guy, ladies and gentlemen, the same guy who just signed the banning voter ID in Virginia law. He just signed it because he says that voter ID is actually racist because individuals of color can't figure out how to get an ID, and therefore it's racist. Here's the guy that's shepherding that, that's saying that, which, by the way, first of all, it's completely untrue. Because if you're on any kind of assistance, and that's the argument that you're making, the argument that you're making is African Americans disproportionately are on assistance, public assistance, and are poor, and therefore can't get an ID. That's not true because you need an ID in order to get on the assistance to begin with. So, but here's the guy leading the way, this particular Governor Ralph Northam, saying, well, it wasn't me in blackface. Initially, I thought it was, but, it's even though it's in my actual med school yearbook, really wasn't me. It was probably somebody else. And but I did have blackface once anyway. It's just, but I only used a little bit of,
Just
shoe
a little
polish.
bit. It's the amount of shoe polish that matters, Mark. If you use too much, then it's over the line. But if it's just a couple of dashes, you're okay.
And then, by the way, Garrick, the press then asks him, we didn't play the end of that, but the press asked him, they said, well, did you, what were you? What did you dress up as with the shoe polish? He said, well, Michael Jackson. And the press goes, well, could you do the moonwalk when you did that? So
he looks around to go and do it.
He goes, well, there's probably not enough space.
His wife saw it and was like, no.
This is inappropriate.
She pulls him and she goes, no, don't do that. Like, because he was about to bust out the moonwalk on stage in the midst of this, big, scandal where he's basically either a Klansman or somebody wearing blackface.
Exactly.
And then the Michael Jackson on top of that.
It's not just the dumbest bill in America, banning voter ID in Virginia, but we have the dumbest governor in America.
He's just
and the biggest hypocrite in America.
He's just so ignorant, but not he just doesn't, he's unaware of anything. No situational awareness. Can't read a room to save his life.
Well, clearly he's like a frat boy and just wants to go along with the club, right? Because clearly he was the Klansman or he was in blackface. And then he said he wasn't. And then, of course, he was in blackface acting like Michael Jackson, but only used a little bit of shoe polish, which is just incredible.
Oh, God.
I mean, and the fact that he's
Can
still
you do
there.
the moonwalk.
It's the fact that he's still there, right?
Yeah.
He's still there.
Well, you got to... Interesting circumstances, because not just Northam had the issue, because Lieutenant Governor Fairfax had his rape allegation, and then I believe the state Secretary of State, who's the next in the line of succession, has his own blackface scandal, because apparently everybody
and they're all Democrats.
Democrat in Virginia has decided that blackface is a good idea.
But they still want to get rid of voter ID because voter ID is racist, even though these are the guys who are the racists that basically have been dressing in blackface. I don't know. I just can't believe this.
And I think he goes about these things to kind of, I believe in his mind, atone for his sins and, try to make up for the discretions that he's made towards the African-American community. It's the people who are, the zealots that tend to have the skeletons buried in their closets.
Exactly. Well, that's it for Mark and the Millennials. That was the last word. Thank you for joining Mark and the Millennials. This is Mark Fisher. Thank you to Garrick Ross, our millennial, and of course, our producer, Adam Katura, who's a millennial. Our assistant producer, Christopher Hopkins, who's a millennial. Check us out on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and our website. See you next time.